Stop what you are doing and imagine standing in a room where love is no longer a fairy tale but a negotiation table. Imagine the air thick with unspoken history, dreams colliding with reality, and two hearts forced to confront the future without illusions. Because what Shen Yue just said to Dylan Wang was not a whisper of affection. It was an ultimatum. And if you believe love alone is enough to sustain a future, prepare to rethink everything. Stay with this story until the final moment, because her conditions are not just shocking, they redefine what commitment truly means. The evening it happened was quiet, almost deceptively calm. The city lights shimmered outside the panoramic windows of a private suite high above the skyline. The atmosphere felt suspended between romance and reckoning. Shen Yue stood near the window, her reflection blending with the glow of distant towers. Dylan Wang watched her from across the room, sensing that this conversation would not be ordinary. They had built something powerful over time. Shared laughter on set. Late-night conversations about ambition. Silent understanding in crowded rooms. Their chemistry was undeniable, admired by fans, speculated on by media, dissected endlessly online. But behind the spotlight lived a quieter truth. Fame magnifies everything, love included. Shen Yue turned slowly, her expression composed but resolute. There was no anger in her eyes, only clarity. If we're going to talk about a future, she began softly, then we need to talk about reality. Dylan leaned forward slightly. He knew this tone. It was the tone she used when something mattered deeply. She walked toward him, each step deliberate. I will not compete with your schedule. I will not compete with public expectations. And I will not compete with silence. The words were calm but firm. Dylan's brow tightened. Silence. She nodded. When things become difficult, you retreat. You work harder. You stay longer on set. You answer interviews with safe answers. You protect your image. But you forget to protect us. The room felt smaller. This was not an accusation delivered in fury. It was an observation shaped by months of reflection. Dylan stood, closing the distance between them. I have always protected us. She held his gaze. Protecting us means prioritizing us. There it was. The first condition. If we are going to have a future, she said, I need transparency. Not curated honesty. Not selective reassurance. Complete transparency. He exhaled slowly. That is difficult in this industry. I know, she replied. That is why I am asking if you are willing. Outside, a helicopter passed in the distance, its faint hum emphasizing the silence inside. She continued. I will not hide in the shadows of your success. If we move forward openly. Not recklessly. Not dramatically. But honestly. The second condition. Dylan looked conflicted. The world they lived in thrived on speculation. On mystery. On strategic distance. Public relationships were dissected and monetized. Privacy was fragile. You are asking me to risk headlines, he said quietly. I am asking you to risk comfort, she corrected. The difference lingered between them. She moved back toward the window, folding her arms gently as if steadying herself. There is more. He almost smiled despite the tension. I assumed there would be. Her voice softened slightly. I need partnership, not performance. When we appear together, it cannot feel like a role we step into. It has to feel real. Support cannot be occasional. It has to be consistent. The third condition. Dylan ran a hand through his hair, processing the magnitude of what she was demanding. These were not superficial requests. They were structural changes to how he navigated fame, career, and public perception. And then came the most mind-blowing revelation of all. If at any point you feel that protecting your image matters more than protecting our relationship, I need you to walk away before I have to. The room fell silent in a way that felt almost sacred. An ultimatum does not always sound aggressive. Sometimes it sounds like self-preservation. Dylan stepped closer again, his expression now serious, stripped of charm. Do you think I would choose image over you? She did not answer immediately. That pause spoke louder than accusation. He looked away briefly, acknowledging the unspoken truth that in moments of crisis, career had often taken priority. I love you, he said finally. She nodded gently. Love is the foundation. But foundation alone does not build a home. The metaphor hung between them, powerful and undeniable. What sacrifices would he have to make? Fewer strategic denials. More visible support. A willingness to stand beside her when rumors erupted instead of retreating into neutrality. A readiness to confront public scrutiny rather than avoiding it. These were not small adjustments. They were transformations. Dylan walked toward the window now, standing beside her. The city below looked unstoppable. Lights flickered like endless opportunities. Endless distractions. If I agree, he said slowly, everything changes. She looked at him with steady certainty. That is the point. The conversation stretched for hours. They spoke about schedules, about managing public appearances, about how to create boundaries without creating distance. They confronted fears they had previously disguised as practicality. At one point, Dylan admitted something that shifted the emotional gravity of the room. I have been afraid that if we go all in publicly, we might lose what makes this special. She responded without hesitation. We lose what makes this special when we treat it like a secret strategy instead of a shared truth. The honesty was raw, but controlled. By midnight, the tension had transformed into something deeper. Not resolution yet, but understanding. Dylan finally faced her fully. If I choose this, I choose it completely. She searched his face, not for romance, but for conviction. And if you cannot, she added gently, then I will still choose myself. That was the final condition. The unspoken one beneath all others. She would not diminish herself to preserve a fragile version of love. The next morning, industry insiders noticed subtle changes. Dylan appeared at an event where Shen Yue was being honored. Not as a distant colleague. Not as a coincidence. But intentionally. Cameras caught a glance between them that felt unguarded. Fans sensed the shift immediately. Comment sections filled with speculation. Analysts debated whether this marked a new chapter. But the real transformation was not in public gestures. It was in private alignment. Days later, during an interview, Dylan was asked about balancing career and personal life. For the first time, he did not deflect. He spoke about learning that success without shared happiness feels incomplete. He acknowledged growth. He acknowledged change. Shen Yue watched the clip quietly later that evening. Not smiling widely. Not celebrating. Just observing. Ultimatums are often painted as dramatic power plays. But hers was different. It was a boundary drawn with grace. A declaration that love must evolve alongside ambition. The shocking part was not that she made demands. It was that her demands were rooted in equality. She did not ask him to shrink his career. She asked him to expand his courage. Whether he ultimately meets every condition remains a story still unfolding. But one truth is undeniable. Shen Yue refused to let her future be shaped by uncertainty. She chose clarity over comfort. Standards over silence. And now the question turns to you. If you stood in that room, looking at someone you love, would you risk everything for transparency? Would you demand partnership over performance? Would you be brave enough to say, choose me fully, or not at all? Because sometimes the most powerful love story begins not with a confession, but with a condition.